it's been a real challenge.
And I'll tell you this, I think we'll just go ahead and jump right on into the topic because, that is obviously the hot topic of the day. When we see issues that come up across the country and there are folks that want to protest on that, both on the right and on the left, we've got a long history in the United States of protest and civil discourse and civil disobedience. But what we're seeing with the riots and the destruction seems to be from a different pace. What's your take on what we're seeing, here in North Carolina and what happened with you guys at the court?
Well, certainly, Michael, our nation is founded on the principles that all are created equal. The rule of law is everybody's treated the same. Lady Justice is blindfolded. She can't see who comes before, rich, poor. Everybody's treated the same. Certainly, I think that there needs to be some constructive dialogue if folks feel like that the system is not working so that everyone is treated the same. But I'll say this, in my 40 years of experience, despite my youthful appearance, I've practiced law 40 years. My time as a prosecutor, my time in private practice, is a system perfect? No. But generally, does it render justice? Yes. I can count on one hand the number of defendants that appeal in my court that say that they're actually innocent. So if you're talking about injustice from the standpoint of, are people being picked on because of their race? The question I have is, did the victims care about the race? I've yet to hear one victim who said, well, only arrest my perpetrator if they are this race. That just doesn't come into the picture in the criminal justice system that I've been a part of now for 40 years. So, I'm puzzled, I'm perplexed that there would be such violence against our courthouses. I know the Wake County Courthouse was closed today. I've heard that courthouses across eastern North Carolina have been vandalized. Ours has. I don't understand how that in any way helps the discourse.
Yeah, and you talk about, the 2020 election cycle being one of the most intense election cycles. Certainly 2016 was a record intensity for a lot of voters. But we've seen, you harken back to elections, in the 60s and the 70s where we had, agitation and we had, riots and in the middle of even a national convention up in Chicago for the Democrats. So we're looking at, what I think is going to be a fairly intense election cycle. How do we step back from that? How do we try and get this back into a mode where we can have people on the left and people on the right talking to each other and going into an election cycle rather than burning buildings down and looting and what we're seeing right now across the country?
Well, I think my court or the Court of Appeals, court systems are a great example. You have people from polar ends of the political spectrum that have a war of ideas, Michael. There's no threat of physical violence. There's a question of persuading those that are persuadable about what is right and just and fair in a particular situation. So to me, I think it's imperative that violence and rioting, none of this has anything to do with the injustice done to the young Black man in Minnesota. Justice is so important that we allow the wheels of justice to work. We have on situations seen evidence that may appear to be very compelling and may at the end of the day may be accurate. On the other hand, wasn't that long ago that so many folks, including 80 Duke professors, came out and said the Duke lacrosse folks were guilty when it was a hoax. So, I don't understand how violence and particularly just stealing from folks, hurting small businesses, smashing people's hopes and dreams, whether they're owned by Black, white, or Latinos or whomever. That just makes no sense to me, frankly.
Yeah, and talk for just a second. You are on the Supreme Court. You're the senior associate justice. You're running to be the chief justice on the Supreme Court, and we're looking right now with a 6-1 Democrat majority on the court. We've got a great slate of candidates with you and Phil Berger Jr. and Tamara Berenger who are running on the court. Talk about the significance of this election cycle for the courts, and kind of the how you're approaching your race, as well as the races for all of the Republicans who are running to be on the Supreme Court.
Well, of course, there are 3 of us for the Supreme Court. You can see in the picture behind me, 5 for the Court of Appeals. We are all conservatives, constitutionalists, and common sense kind of folks. What does that mean? If ever we needed somebody to enforce the constitutional protections of our God-given rights, it's now. And certainly constitutionalists do that. We look at what did the founders intend when they drafted our Constitution and we entered that social contract. Conservatives, we're not activists. We're not legislators in black robes. We don't legislate from the bench. We simply apply the law as it was intended and allow the people's branch, the elected branch of representatives, senators, to change the law. And common sense means that the law always has a common sense component. For example, the Supreme Court of North Carolina ruled that child repeat sex offenders had more rights, frankly, than you and I, and that society had no right to track their going into parks and playgrounds and schools, things like that. That's not common sense. So those are the ideals. How important is this election? If I lose and Bill and Tamara lose, 0-7, the next time the Supreme Court could have a conservative majority would be 2028. 2028. What damage could be done from a constitutional jurisprudence perspective if you have folks who don't uphold the Constitution as drafted? So it's so important that folks get out and vote and know who the conservatives are. Now, this time we'll all be running with party label. That hurt us in 2016 when Bob Edmonds lost. And then, of course, we had the fiasco of 2018. With judicial candidates, nobody knows who we are. People will make up their own mind about governor and president and senator, but each of us has an opportunity to influence people with regard to judges. 55% of North Carolinians want conservative judges. We just got to say, okay, Scooby-Dooby, vote for Newby. There's your guy for Chief Justice. And you want conservatives, here they are. So hopefully it's just a matter of informing folks when they go vote who the conservative judges would be.
Yeah, you hit on an important point, and it really comes down to what does a progressive, a liberal, progressive, Supreme Court justice or Supreme Court majority do in these particular cases versus what would a conservative Republican, court do, or even a balanced court, right? I mean, I always say that we would rather have NC values on the court than NYC values on the court. Talk for a minute just about your philosophy in terms of being a conservative jurist and what you bring to any particular case that you have. Your work ethic. I know that you spend a significant amount of time doing research and working on your own opinions and making sure that we're trying here in North Carolina to adhere both to the law, but also the fact that we've got a state constitution and a federal constitution. So how do you wrap all that up, and what does it mean to be a conservative jurisprudent?
Wow, you want me to put everybody to sleep? Is that the deal? Talk about
well, we'll do that in 2 minutes or less, right?
My judicial philosophy is that there are three branches of government for a reason. I love history. I'm a student of history, and it's clear that no one thought that judges were smarter than everybody else, and that judges ought to flex the judicial muscle. And since we do get the final say, let's be clear about that, under both the state and federal constitutions, the Supreme Court does get the final say. But that's why you got to have judges that understand judicial modesty, judicial self-restraint, that nobody died and made a judge king. I haven't been given a special anointing of infallibility because I wear a black robe. So I love the way that our system works. Where should most all public policy decisions be made? That's the public square. That's the legislative branch, where the folks can properly debate what should be done. They can make the policy decisions. It's not up for a court to say, man, if I had been a legislator, I would have ruled this way, or if I were part of the Constitutional Convention, I would have done this. No, we don't take our opinions and implant them on someone else, or a conservative judge doesn't do that. A conservative judge simply upholds the rule of law, which is to say the law needs to be fairly, consistently, predictably applied. And if people don't like it, change it at the General Assembly. Don't change it by an activist judge.
Yeah, that's a really important point.
Yeah, in terms of my work ethic, I really do. I understand that at the end of the day, I've taken an oath to put my best work forward, and whether it'll be tonight and tomorrow as I stay up late and get up early to work on the opinions that are the work of the court. It's vital that we do our homework properly, that we properly apply the precedent from this court to back up our legal research. So that's something that I've done since 2004, and that's something I certainly will do till my days on this court are no more.
Well, I got to tell you, we appreciate that work ethic, and as Judge Berger has said, that having you write all of the dissents as the one conservative on the court, we've got to end that practice and get you a wingman or two, and be able to work forward on it. So let me switch gears real quick. You are a very lucky man. As you know, you've got a absolutely fantastic bride in Macon, and people definitely love to see her when you guys are traveling around the state. How did you meet her? How did a guy like you get lucky enough to marry a great woman like that?
Well, I definitely, as you're indicating, married way over my head. No doubt about that. No dispute. I would not have to dissent on that opinion. All right. And if people want to know what kind of judge I am, I say, look at my wife. I mean, if somehow I had something to do in picking her out. We actually met in law school, and God worked miracles. So there we go. We've been married since 1983. I graduated from law school in 80. She graduated from law school in 82. And so we're so blessed. And you're right. I mean, everywhere I go, Macon's with me. I mean, hey, I can just sit in the corner and let her be the center of attention. Or, if she's not with me, if my daughter Sarah is, they all love Sarah and Macon. So I'm just so blessed, Michael. Thank you.
Well, and I tell you, as a candidate, you're a statewide candidate, and you've been a statewide candidate obviously before. This is a big state. We got 100 counties, and I feel sometimes like we've got 3 different time zones here. And tell me what it's like for you, kind of to have her there when you guys are driving across the state, to have a sounding board, and what it means to be able to have her travel with you, when you're going from Murphy to Manteo and Watauga to Wilmington.
This is the first time she had been able to campaign with me. Obviously, we're having to do a bunch virtually now, but I couldn't do the work on the court and campaign without her, because she's the first 2 times she wasn't able to get out because we had young children, and Sarah takes a lot of attention, a lot of work. So Macon pretty much was hanging out at home, and so now she's able to go with me, and she's so great about allowing me to do my work. And I'm able to read and write actually while we're in the car, she's driving and I'm working. You know, it's just I'm very blessed that I'm able to do that. So I couldn't do it. Could not have done it without her.
Well, I'll tell you, you mentioned Sarah, and we here at NCGOP absolutely love Sarah, who is actually serves as our director of judicial campaigns, and is working not just with your race, but with all of the races on the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. Spend just a minute and tell everybody how important that Court of Appeals is. I think they tend to get lost in the shuffle when you think about the Supreme Court. But those are also statewide electeds, and we've got 5 great races that are up this cycle. What would it mean to you on the Supreme Court to have 4 new Republicans and 4 new conservatives on that bench after this year?
Well, it is vitally important. So I'm an old guy. Okay, I got a lot more life in my rearview mirror than I do in my windshield. And according to state statute, I've become senile, at age 72. So I can only do so much. And I so enjoy investing in these younger lawyers. And I've had the opportunity to get to know all the different Court of Appeals candidates, as well as Judge Dillon, that's the Court of Appeals incumbent. It is so important that we continue to allow these very capable individuals to serve on the Court of Appeals, because we need qualified candidates to run for the Supreme Court, and that's the most likely source.
Yeah, and I think with what Phil Berger Jr. is trying to do right now to be able to move up and join you as well. What's it like to have such a good slate there with Phil and Tamara as you guys are looking at these 3 particular races? I think the fact that you guys as a group kind of came through without having to have primaries, which was fantastic. It allowed you to get around the state and kind of introduce yourselves, reintroduce yourself to everybody without having to go through a primary process. But what's it like to kind of run as a slate? Because that's fairly unusual in North Carolina politics.
Well, I think it's important that each of us has gotten to know one another, certainly to know each other's judicial philosophy. And then instead of sending 8 people to one venue and people having to endure 8 judges giving speeches, it's only 1 or 2, speaking on behalf of all the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals candidates. So it's been really a treat to get to know these folks, and frankly, to be energized by them. Each one brings their own skill set, their own personalities, but a great deal of energy to these campaigns. They all understand what's at stake, and they're working as hard as any judicial candidates I've ever seen. And again, I've been doing this since 2004, so I've seen a bunch. And these folks are really working hard, well representing conservative values in the judicial races.
Yeah, and I got to say, we have, here at NCGOP, certainly a very big appreciation for what it takes to run these races and how important they are. We have created the Judicial Victory Fund to be able to raise money for the Supreme Court slate, the Court of Appeals slate, to be able to support you guys in your candidacy. But, what we saw in 2016 and 2018 was a major influx of outside money into North Carolina, millions of dollars that were being spent on judicial races here, being raised in places like New York and California and Massachusetts. And it really did politicize the court in a way that I think is not necessarily healthy, but it put the onus on you guys being able as candidates to get out there, to campaign, to raise money, to be able to defend your seat and be able to win these other seats. Talk about being a candidate and what that's like, as opposed to, a candidate for attorney general or senate or president who gets to go do politics all the time. You guys have a couple areas where you can't really play, but you got to be able to raise the money and get the resources into your races.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we don't have like, I will appoint you to the Fish and Wildlife Commission. I will really push this particular policy on your behalf. I mean, all we can say is we're going to get out there and do justice. And you know, a lot of how to pay money to get people that'll do justice. I thought that was part of being an American, and yet sadly, we've seen over and over again courts use that power in ways that the judicial branch was not designed. So it's difficult to, oh, don't forget the judges, you know, to approach donors and let them know just how important our races are. And yet I think what the left has figured out is that the Supreme Courts of the states are the final say with regard to state constitutions. And while the U.S. Supreme Court may be moving more and more toward understanding true constitutional conservatism, they're able to, through funding various liberal candidates on a state court level, they're able to have their impact that way.
Yeah, you know, and when we see what President Trump has done in terms of remaking the federal judiciary, working with, you know, the Republican majority in the Senate, we've got Senator Tom Tillis, of course, who's on the Judiciary Committee, you know, where the president has made appointments that have been confirmed by the Senate, 200 lifetime federal judicial appointees, including the 2 that we have on the Supreme Court. You know, that is so critical for everything that we're trying to do. And in North Carolina, I think it's great that we've got you guys on the ballot. We have ours next to your name. And I really do think that the voters are going to respond because they see the benefits of what President Trump is doing on the federal side and understand that we need to do that on you know, the state side. So we're going to continue to try and draw those parallels and make sure that people understand how important it is for us to have a conservative judiciary going forward with it. So, you know, we appreciate the work that you've done, both as a judge and as a candidate, to be able to put yourself in a position there.
Well,
you know,
Michael,
one
on
of the
behalf
things,
of all the, yeah, if I may, just on behalf
yeah,
of all the judicial candidates, again, I'm the oldest rat in the judicial barn, been doing it a long time. I've never seen our party put more emphasis or resources to judicial races. And I know all of us are very much appreciative. Judicial Victory Fund, thank you for your vision and all that you're doing to bring that about.
well, I appreciate it. And I got to tell you that that was one of the most important things that I talked about when I was looking at taking over the chairmanship and talking to people all across the state before coming into this position, was the importance of the judges. So I think that the Republican Party base clearly understands this. I think that the business community certainly understands this. Regulated industries certainly understand it. And having the president as a leader on this issue certainly is tremendously important. You know, I want to switch back over to the personal side. So as when I came out of law school, I was up in Notre Dame and you know, grew up here in North Carolina, but I came back down to North Carolina, was clerking for a guy named Robert Potter down in Charlotte. And one of the things that really helped me is I had a couple of guys, Phil Van Hoy and Tom Ashcroft, who really took me under their wings as well as Judge Potter, and helped me understand what it meant to be a conservative attorney, what it meant to be a conservative lawyer, and how important the judicial positions were. You, as a professor over at Campbell, you also have a great group that you convene together where you mentor young attorneys and you kind of work with them to bring them along and understand how important this process is. Talk about how important that is for you to kind of be a mentor and to be able to develop the next generation of conservative attorneys here in North Carolina.
Well, Michael, President Reagan famously reminded us that freedom is not something you inherit. Freedom is something that has to be passed down from generation to generation. People have to reach a new understanding of the value of our freedoms. Our state constitution says a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles is absolutely necessary to preserve the blessings of liberty. Sadly, our higher education process, both undergrad and law school, don't bring us to fundamental principles. They often are teaching a philosophy that is inconsistent with those of our framers and our founders. And so it's been my privilege to take young law students and lawyers under my wings to talk to them about the judicial process, talk to them about the limited role of judges, to help them appreciate life, liberty, property, all these fundamental rights that government is instituted among people to protect these fundamental rights. And yet the right to succeed is also the right to fail. Yes, we as a compassionate society provide certain safety nets, but it's not the government's role to go in and make decisions for people. That's the beauty of freedom. So, I try to have about 20 interns every year from different law schools. I have 3 law clerks, and then, like you've indicated, I also try to spread the influence I might have through other avenues to ensure that young people who are interested in conservative values and conservative principles truly understand what those are, and understand that, hey, I'm not alone in having these ideas. What my mom and dad taught me growing up, actually, despite what my professors have said, actually, that's the right way to do things. So, I think it's incumbent upon us, folks my age, to be sure that we are investing in the next generation.
Well, and I appreciate you doing that. Like I said, as I came along through law school and was a research assistant, and then in the clerkship, and I was able to do an internship with Senator Jesse Helms, and really truly got to grow through that process. So it's vital that you're doing that. Want to wrap up here with one last question, which is you need help on the campaign. All candidates need help on the campaign. For all of the folks all across the state, what can they do to help you with your campaign, given how important it is for you to be, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court?
Well, and Chief Justice, what does that mean? I get that asked frequently. I get asked, why doesn't the court select it? Why is it elected separately? Well, the Constitution, since 1868, when we started electing judges, said the Chief Justice would be elected separately. Chief Justice is the head of the 6,500 person judicial branch. The Chief Justice oversees that operation. And if you're familiar at all with various courthouse closings and things like that have been going on for the last, long period of time, multiple months, you can see some of the inherent power in the position of the Chief Justice. So it's vital that we get someone in that position with, one, the experience to be able to properly interact with the other 6 justices, but also that heads that position. In terms of what you can do, obviously, we need your financial help if you're able to do that. Don't forget the Judicial Victory Fund after you've maxed out to us candidates, individual candidates. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't encourage you to visit paulnewby.com. As we share things on social media, you're supposed to do stuff that I have no idea what it means, but like share and like and be a friend or something. Anyway, you guys who do social media stuff, y'all know what to do, but that's important. And then, like I said earlier, old-fashioned emails. Hey, I don't know if you're thinking about the judicial races. You need to do that when you go to vote. Visit paulnewby.com. Don't we need someone with his experience and background to be Chief Justice? That kind of thing may be all it takes for somebody to think, okay, now I've got an informed vote for Chief Justice. So those are things that can be done, Michael.
Excellent. Well, I got to say to everybody who's watching this, make sure that you support Justice Newby. It is absolutely critical that we have him as the Chief Justice. Make sure you support all the rest of our statewide candidates. We have got to get these crucial seats back on the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. Paul, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the Chairman's Chat, and look forward to seeing you on the trail once the curtain gets lifted and we can get back into political events. And for everybody else, I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and join us next week. We're going to have E.C. Sykes, who's running for the Secretary of State here in North Carolina, and should be a great show. And everybody have a great week. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.